available for public viewing. Apologies for absence. We had apologies from Councillor Julie Davis, who cannot make this meeting.
Apologies for lateness from Councillor Simon Sappho.
And lateness from Councillor Simon Sappho. So Councillor Julie Davis, item 8 will now not happen, basically. Urgent business, we have no urgent business. Any declarations of interest?
Sorry, Chair, just in terms of urgent business, we don't have any urgent business. It's probably worth flagging at this juncture that Councillor Davis is unwell, so we're going to have to withdraw the Q&A item that was scheduled for the agenda.
Yeah.
I believe you said you'd like to roll that over to the following meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's item 8 that we're withdrawing. Yeah. So let's introduce ourselves. I'm Councillor John Bevan. I'm the chair of this committee.
Councillor Pippa Connor, Vice Chair of this committee and Chair of Adults and Health.
Councillor Makbule Guinness, the Chair of Children and Young People's Panel.
I'm Matt White. I chair the Housing Planning and Development Panel.
Frances Palopoli, Head of Finance.
And my name's Philip Slaughter. I am the Scrutiny Officer that supports this committee.
The people on the screen like to introduce themselves. Yvonne.
Hello, I'm Yvonne Denny. I'm the representative for the London Diocesan Board.
Hello, Chair. I'm Jess Crow. I'm the Director for Culture, Strategy and Engagement, and I think you're looking at the areas covered by my directorate in your budget scrutiny later this evening.
Good evening, all. I'm Andy Briggs. I'm the Assistant Director for Corporate and Customer Services.
And I'm Flo Armstrong. I'm Interim Head of Library, Arts and Culture.
The last speaker, can you speak up? We couldn't quite hear you.
Was that me? Can you hear me now?
That's better, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Flo Armstrong. I'm Interim Head of Libraries, Arts and Culture.
Okay, thank you. Oh, other member has arrived. Would you like to introduce yourselves quickly? Right, so the next item is item 6, minutes of the meeting of the 13th of October. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Of the scrutiny panel minutes that are attached, there's one.
Sorry, Chair. So apologies. There are 2 sets of minutes from overview and scrutiny for the panel to formally ratify. So there's one from the 13th of October, one for the 28th.
28th of November as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, agreed to ratify those. Yeah.
And then the scrutiny panel minutes. There's 4 panel minutes in the pack. On one of the reports, the housing report, on page 21, there's an item about aids and adaptations, where it refers to the service being done in 2 places, within the council and within X Homes for Haringey department. We're really recommending that they be joined up and operate as one. So we would like to have some wording in the minutes that enable that to happen.
So just am I right in thinking that you would like a report brought back to the March meeting on this by officers in terms of how the aids and adaptations, the 2 teams work, and how the existing work streams to bring them together is coming along, and what more could be done?
Yeah, how the work streams to bring them together can be done, and as soon as possible, basically. Yeah. Is that agreed?
That's agreed, because at
Yeah.
Adults and Health, we've just done urgent adaptations as well. There's a big report coming back to our March meeting, so actually that would probably work well with the timings to ask for that to be looked at as part of that piece of work.
Yep, I'm happy with that as well.
Right, so that's agreed. So item 8, as we know, is not happening. The cabinet member has not been able to be here. So the next item is item 9, scrutiny of the draft budget and 5-year medium-term financial strategy, culture and engagement. Pippa, would you like to start off on this as you sort of
Thank you, Chair.
attend to the budget in
Yeah.
scrutiny?
Thank you. Yeah, so as the Vice Chair, I lead on this item because it's the budget item. So agenda item 9, it starts, the main report pack starts on page 61 of the papers. The appendices are on page 125 for those who are following online and just, elsewhere. So I'm just going to bring in Officer, I think Jess is going to speak to the papers. But I think just to let people listening either at home or sort of not in the room, that what we're going to do is have a quick look at the information within the main report. Initially to have some questions on that section, and then we're going to go through the appendices where actually the main part of this meeting will be taking place, and that's appendices C through appendices G. In the reports pack. So just to let people know that that's how we're going to be taking the meeting tonight. And we'll go through the appendices sort of section by section. So when we get to that bit, but the main pack, obviously we'll sort of just take items out of it that are relating to the culture section. So thank you, and over to Jess. And Jess, would you like to introduce this report? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Connor. I should also say that Councillor Chandwani, as one of the other lead members, is also online. Just to draw that to members' attention, and obviously she might want to say something as well. But I'll start off with the overview of the directorate, and it might be worth for members sort of convenience just to kind of explain it. It is a new directorate, and you would previously probably have looked at the Customers Transformation Resources Directorate, but during the course of last year there were some changes following the new administration and the arrival of the new chief executive, and so this new directorate was created, which brings together most of Customer Transformation Resources, but also brings in libraries, arts and culture as well. And ultimately, over the course of the coming year, the sort of resident experience element of the directorate, what was customers, will transfer to the new Environment and Resident Experience Directorate. So there will be some changing around of the sort of the different components, but as it stands, CSE includes what was the old CTR plus libraries and culture. So the proposal set out for this budget, and I think it's maybe worth saying this is probably the case for other areas, but there's been a kind of a look at a number of historic savings, some of which have been delivered, some of which we have reviewed and do not believe are therefore delivered, so that where we can get to hopefully for the coming year is a budget position that is a lot more reliable and realistic, perhaps, so that we're really clear what our budget envelope is and what it needs to, what's the resources are that we need to deliver within. And I think one of the things that I found arriving partway through the year, I've been at Haringey for 6 months, is that there's a number of things that have been on the books, so to speak, for really quite a long time. In some cases, savings that were put forward pre-pandemic, and obviously the world has changed significantly. Then there've been a number of changes to priorities for the council, and obviously an election and a clear new administration. So we've taken the opportunity this year for a really thorough review of what we think is still deliverable, and what we think is no longer the right focus, and or other things have overtaken them. So there's quite a lot of ins and outs, which I appreciate makes it complex to read, and it is probably easier to go through each of the appendices because the sort of net figures don't kind of give a clear picture of exactly what's proposed. So there's a number of old savings being proposed to be deleted or reprofiled. There are a number of new savings, which in some cases replace those previous ones or are additional. And there's also some growth, which is about right sizing the budget in some areas to deal with known pressures. Perhaps if I deal with the growth first at sort of high level, there has been a persistent overspend, and those of you who've monitored the spending position of the council over this year will have seen that there is a persistent overspend in the benefits area, which is a case of a reduction in government grants, sort of proceeding faster than the anticipated reduction in activity that was supposed to recognise. And so this is to do with the replacement of housing benefit by universal credit, and the cases of housing benefit are reducing, but not as fast as the government's grant for administering it anticipates. And so what we've put forward in the budget in that area is an injection of cash for next year to replace the lost grant, but an anticipation that the numbers will reduce, and so a more realistic reduction that mirrors the current rate of reduction in housing benefit cases, so that growth will gradually be sort of paid back, if you like, through a reduction in the revenue budget in that area as the cases of housing benefit, and that gives the service a more realistic budget to work within, and we believe better reflects activity. And Andy can talk a bit more about that if you've got questions on that, and I hope I've got the detail right on that so far. So that's the growth in that area. We've also had some old savings from what was the front office back office program that we think we've gone as far as we can in terms of the money that can be taken out of the customer front office at this stage, until we do some more work to improve the digital infrastructure and the customer experience and resident experience in contacting the council. So we are asking for that very old saving to be taken out. Again, we can talk to some detail on that if needed. And likewise, we're in libraries. There were some very old forecast income generation targets, which we do not believe are now realistic to be delivered. Some, for example, were predicated on hiring out space in Wood Green Library. That space has now been used for customer services who've been moved in there upstairs as a result of a subsequent review of our corporate accommodation strategy. And so that space is no longer available to be rented out for income generation. So as a result of a number of changes in direction by the council like that, that income target, which again you'll have seen is contributing to an overspend in libraries this year, is being taken out. And we do still have an income target. I should say that was an additional income target, but we do still have an income target, and we will work hard to meet that. But obviously, as you will appreciate, also post-pandemic hire of spaces for activities has been slow to pick up, but we're going to work over the coming year to promote our spaces, and the investment in capital that libraries have had will make those spaces hopefully more attractive to organisations to use and hire. So we again, this is about making the budget more realistic and right sizing it. So and then the final piece of growth is in elections, which is so as a result of the requirement for individual electoral registration, we now have to write to electors individually and send out posts to them individually. So where rather than just sending it to the household, that is creating a huge pressure on our print and postage budget in elections. Again, that's contributing to an overspend. So we're seeing some growth to deal with that. I mean, as an example, where you might previously have sent one piece of correspondence to a household, if there are 3 adults in it, we have to send 3. If they don't reply immediately, we have to send 3 chasers when they respond, rather than sending one poll card with the details of the electors on it. We have to send 1 for each. So it's just an additional new burden which has not been fully met by the government's new burdens funding. So those are the growth items. I know it's a bit kind of complex, and apologies for going into that detail, but hopefully that's helpful to explain what those changes are, and those changes to old historic savings. We've then put forward a series of new revenue savings, which are detailed in Appendix C, I think it is, which give the detail for what we believe are realistic savings, some for next year and some for subsequent years. Did you want me to go into those in detail now, Councillor?
No, sorry, Jess. So what we'll do is we'll let you do that when we actually come to the
Yes, that's what I
appendices, so
thought.
that it makes
They're the more
sense. I think
substantial things.
we were just going to have that initial sort of oversight from
Yeah.
overview, sorry, from you on the budget as a whole within your directorate. But once you've done that part, we'll then just ask questions on that sort of more general aspect, and then we'll go on to these appendices.
Sure.
And I think it'll make more sense to talk about that.
I think that's right. Yeah, so just to conclude then, really, I mean, as I've said, that's why I've sort of gone into detail on those sort of growth items, because I think it is about trying to create a sensible and workable budget that we can work within and deliver to budget. And I and you can hold budget holders to account for working within budgets that are realistic and can be lived within. So there's been quite a lot of work over the last few months to just go through where our budgets are, what's realistic, where the pressures are, and to really understand that, so that we've got a clean position for the coming year. I think that there are still pressures, and perhaps if I end on that, I'd say there are a lot of changes still needed in how we manage and run our library service, and so that's one of the areas that Flo has been doing a lot of work on this year, is really to understand where we spend our money, how we compare with other boroughs, and how we can make sure that we are making good use of the resources that are in there. The borough's fortunate to have a really more generous than some other boroughs have been able to keep or have chosen to keep. Boroughs chosen to protect libraries. We have long opening hours, and we just need to make sure that we are managing that resource in the most effective way possible. And so a lot of work to just make sure that the budgets are robust and well managed, and the library service understands how to do that. So that in libraries, pressures always in resident services in terms of demand. We work really closely with other services. So, for example, we've seen a lot of parking related demand, a lot of LTN related demand and queries, and we've worked closely with those services to make sure that demand is sort of funded from their services, because their activity contributes to increased demand and contact from residents, and also tried to work with them to get information out to prevent people needing to contact us. And so a lot of work done to really make sure that we can live with that. But that pressure remains and is the focus of work in the coming year, to make sure that we can manage the demand pressures in customer services. And then I suppose the final thing I'd say on the work around the budget is the work on digital transformation. There's been a sort of series of digital transformation programs of one kind and another in the borough, relating to sort of customer access and digitisation. I don't think those have always delivered in the way that perhaps was anticipated, and so we've been doing some work over the last few months, and certainly since I've been here, to really challenge the basis of some of those programs. And so you'll see in the growth and revised savings, a reprofiling of digital services savings. But what is really critical for me is that there is a need for investment in our digital infrastructure to improve and address the demand pressures which contribute to cost pressures in Andy's services around customer contact. If people can't navigate things well on the through the website and through our online services, then they're likely to ring us up or want to come in. So we have to get our digital infrastructure right. We have to do that digital modernization in reality, not just in name, and that will help us manage our cost pressures in the telephone and face-to-face. So that's another focus. We think that will deliver savings ultimately, but we've got some work to do, and that's why there's a reprofiling, so that the savings from that digital work are due in subsequent years, not next year. Next year is about improving the resident experience, improving the infrastructure, enabling people to get what they need, and to be supported to get what they need, and then we can look to making sure that that is done in the most efficient way possible. So I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you, Jess, for that. So I think what we're going to do to begin with is just take some questions from the members around the main sort of, the bigger questions, that if you've got any around the main body of the report. I know that there's some questions around tables and clarifications. That's quite useful sometimes just to bring up at this point, because then it gets noted and things can improve for the next one. So if anybody wants to bring anything about the main report, we'll do that quickly, and then we'll move on to actually the main appendices, where the main body of information is for the scrutiny tonight. So Councillor Simmons-Sappho, have you got anything on the main body that you want to? You can come back. You don't have to have your watch on.
I just had one thing. It was just about 0.5.6 on page 63, which says that many of the issues are outside the council's direct control. The financial planning process to date has sought to acknowledge and respond to these factors due to the timing matters still evolving and cannot yet be finalised. So that kind of leaves me wondering, well, there are many issues out of the council's control. It's been stated here. What are the ones that are in their control? To be quite specific, measured, and also it's evolving. So this kind of leaves me a bit in limbo, because it doesn't bring home what you have in your hand and what you are doing, because it's always evolving. And also many of the issues are outside of the council's control. Leaves me quite perturbed, to be honest.
Okay, good question to start the process. So Councillor Chandwani or Jess or Francis, Francis, we're going to come straight to you on the finance aspect.
Yeah, maybe I could pick that up, Councillor. It's sort of the introduction for the whole of the council's draft budget for next year, not just the bit that Jess manages. I think we will be aware that it's been we've had a challenging number of years with COVID. We've had a lot of issues on an international level, which have impacted energy prices, cost of living. We've had a number of changes at government level as well, which has meant that the information coming through to us and decisions around funding have been quite difficult this year. So that's the sort of stuff that's outside our control. Some examples of that. In terms of your other bit about not being able to get your hands on the tangible bit, again, this is largely to do with the central government and delays. We do need to set a balanced budget by statute, and we will do that in the final report that we're going on the 7th of February. The main issue here was that the autumn statement was late, and then the subsequent detail around that, which provides the allocation to Haringey as opposed to Camden or Islington, that didn't come out until the 19th of December, which was after we'd published this report. So there was a real danger in sort of trying to double guess exactly what funding we were going to get. So that's that nebulous bit, Councillor. We've obviously been working through that since we published the report, and the February report will present a balanced budget. We will have interpreted the funding that we've got. We would have considered other things like changes to inflation that are continuing in the background, changes to interest rates. And so what you'll get on the 7th of February will be a balanced budget, and we will explain the change from this draft budget.
Thank you very much. That does help, because I was thinking, well, what am I actually scrutinising? Because there isn't really, you know, that essence there. But thank you. On the 7th of February, I look forward to seeing that. And
I think just to make it clear, that's the budget overall. What
I was talking
about. What we're focusing on tonight is specifically the changes in customer CSE area, and those are still proposed, tangible proposals on the table.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Thanks. Just to follow up on Councillor Simmons-Sappho's question. Obviously, the report that's in front of us was necessarily based on quite partial information. More information has come to light since then. So both generally and also for the area that we're scrutinising tonight, are we looking at an improved picture or a worse picture than we were when the report was published? Do you have any information on that?
So I think probably be more appropriate if I sort of ask John and Josephine, we will prepare something ahead of next week's meeting for that. We're always in this sort of tricky position because we haven't necessarily finished all our considerations. There's moving parts at a national level. We haven't got all the grant announcements. We haven't got public health, for example. That's always very late. There are changes, as I said, in terms of interest rates. So there are quite a number of still moving pieces. But I'll raise that with John and see whether we can bring something a bit slightly more tangible to next week, even if it's at a sort of a high level. But as you're aware, we do have to actually set a balanced budget, so we will be coming with a balanced position to the next cabinet meeting.
Great. Well, we've already got our first recommendation, I think, of the night between those two questions. So that's the ask for John and Josephine to come back to the next meeting next week with any improved budget updates or, you know, any changes, whether it's improved or not, I think is the ask on that. So we'll go back and ask for that. Thank you. Councillor Guinness, anything on this? Did you want to ask about the tables, or have you got another question?
Sorry, my question is kind of really general in terms of like all the proposed investment and all the proposed savings. Are we able to realistically deliver a good service in those areas? Like, I just wanted to kind of understand that what would be the impact of it on services, on residents, on customers? Like, are we able to manage? We know that, I mean, throughout the report, it does emphasize that it's going to be a tough year. It's going to be a tough year ahead. But how tough it's going to be on those two areas? Customer services obviously has had difficulties in the past. I know there's, you know, technological improvement implemented in order to do some further savings, but we don't want the situation to be in a worse situation than we are in. So can you like reassure us that it's not going to be as bad as this year, but difficult?
Okay, I'll take this as a general one. So obviously there's no absolute guarantees because things changing all the time. I think what over the last few years we've tried to do, and we've continued to do it, and we've spoken about some of the, or Jess has spoken about some of the agreed decisions from previous years, which we review, you know, we're reviewing and monitoring in year. And if if we genuinely believe that it's no longer deliverable as we expected, we look to write that out, because as Jess was saying, there's no point in going forward with budgets that they're fictional. They become fictional if we, on one hand, we're overspending in the year, like the benefits example we discussed at the beginning. We are overspending in that area. We've now we're recognising that, and we're actually putting money in so that actually next year the benefit service have their best chance of working within that. There's no 100% guarantees. Nobody can tell you that. This is, we're going through line by line, service by service, to try and take out the savings no longer deemed achievable, trying to recognise where growth is going to come forward, and try and do what we can within the resources that we've got.
Is it all right, Councillor Connor, if I also, because I think there's a political element to that question.
Sorry, hang on. Sorry, there's a quick.
Sorry, just a really quick follow up, and just wanted to say, in terms of like the previous saving, how well did we manage to, save them and reach our targets and so on? And also, Francis, you mentioned about the benefit. Is that the council tax benefit or the housing benefit we're talking about? Because historically, there was always a problem with like delayed lost income from council's part, because the government, like somehow lots of money got lost and we were losing quite a lot of money. And I was kind of under the impression that we managed to be in a much more stable or sustainable area now. Okay, I'll let you answer.
Yes, if I just come back on that one. So the pressure is around funding the day-to-day activities, so the officers required to deliver the amount of volume of requests we've got. So that's the issue we're trying to address here. I don't know whether you're thinking about when council tax, we used to have a benefit, a national scheme that was going back, Andy could perhaps remind me, about 10 years ago, not that long ago. Oh, maybe it's, okay.
I'm talking about 3 to like maybe maximum 3 years ago, or up to 3 years ago, we had that issue back.
So maybe that was an issue in terms of errors, and I know there have been some problems in terms of how we're managing the benefit service, and probably Andy's perhaps in a better position to respond to that. But I think certainly the service has been working hard to learn from where the errors were taking place and actually trying to make sure we're mitigating those happening again. But Andy will be able to provide that.
Yeah,
okay, so we'll take Andy, and then I've got Councillor Chandwani, I think, also indicated she wants to speak after Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Deputy Chair, just to reassure councillors, what was council was referring to there was the when benefits used to go to corporate committee on the error subsidy, and the authority was losing money substantially about 4 years ago. I think at its worst case it was about £600,000 a year because of the volume of errors. That has subsequently improved significantly to last year having not lost any of its subsidy whatsoever. So in relation to benefit errors, there's been significant improvement. I think that's what the question was probably in relation to.
Yeah, Councillor Chandwani, did you want to
yeah, I just wanted to come back on the first question, and apologies, I think I clicked a restart button and completely logged myself out when you called me in last time, which was a bit embarrassing. Councillor Guinness, I think that the days that we could make savings and that there won't be any pain don't exist. The reason that we are where we are is because the Tory government want to shrink the state. And this is why there's an ideological difference between the Tories and the Labour Party. You know, we're very much into public services and the Tories are not. And if the government of the day is not into public services, it's going to cut us, and it has cut us for the last 12 years. And they've all been very painful cuts, either to individuals or to wide groups of people or to the whole community. I think what we've tried to do is the cuts to customer service, and I know we're going to move on to them shortly, is coming in 24-25. So we've still got a year to really assess what's happening. I think that the drop of 51% of people coming now to face-to-face provision could be people being forced to kind of go online during COVID, and now I've kind of stuck to that. But then they have also gone onto the phones. So where that kind of measurement is. So I think that there's different things we need to look at and not just compare, make a proposal for April based on last year and the year before, because they were the most extraordinary years that we've ever seen in centuries. And so I think we're giving ourselves a year for that. I think it's the role of scrutiny to really raise their concerns and to raise where they want us to, where their recommendations are, where they want things to be measured or what they want the next year to look like whilst we build up to 24-25. So I'll leave my comments there, but it's not something that we're thinking we can action tomorrow. In terms of the question around things that can change, I don't think any of us foresaw COVID. I don't think anyone else foresaw that before COVID we would have 18,000 people universal credit, and then we ended up having 45,000 people on universal credit within 6 months of COVID. I mean, that was major. And then that means that those people are now claiming council tax reduction that we didn't account for. So I think that those things, I'm not saying that we're going to have a global health pandemic again, but anything could happen. The cost of living is really affecting people, and if people then can't pay their council tax, then it has an impact on us. If people are trying to claim extra discretionary housing payment because they can't pay their rent, that has an impact on us. So I think they're the variables that we're in uncharted territory at the moment. And I think that that's quite a scary place to be for our residents, especially who are kind of living week to week. And I think I just read something today that residents across the country are going sometimes 2 to 3 days without gas or electricity because they can't afford to top up until they next get paid. So I think it's really, really scary times. And because we are trying to support residents, we have to be agile to what support they need, and therefore that will have spikes of where we need to spend money to support them to ensure that they don't become an even more bigger crisis and then become more costly for adult services or child protection services, etc. So I think that there is no chance for us not to need to spend money because of the issues, but our programme is to help people before they get to more expensive crisis moments through early intervention. So I hope that helps answer those questions, and apologies again that I logged myself out.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chandwani. Got Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, just quickly, you say that public health, we still don't know about the financial results from the government. How many other areas how many other streams of funding are we still unsure of and we're still waiting for decisions? Is it many, or is it basically just public health that is left now?
If I take that one, probably of our larger grants, public health is the big one, and they tend not to share the information often until February time. So if we don't get that before the February cabinet meeting, we will make an assumption. The last few years, public health grant has been inching up a little bit, so we'd probably go with 2.5% to be conservative. But it's ring fence, so obviously the activity will have to make sure it lives within that grant.
Thank you. I've got one question on the main papers as well. So page 91 at table 7.50. So just looking at the culture, strategy and engagement line, which is the top line, you mentioned these are the savings that aren't deliverable, and on that line under 2023, I've got 2.9 million approximately. Just checking that's a correct reading of that table. So it's page 91 in the pack at 7.50. I'm just going to pause while I let Francis get to the
Yeah, so I think that is the net. Let me just have a look of, that's broadly the reprofiling of the digital together that Jess mentioned a little while later. So in the current year and next year, there was that savings target predominantly was to be delivered this year and a bit next year. As Jess has explained, there's been some rethinking about that. So this one, we're not saying is no longer achievable at all. We're just saying we need more time to develop and identify how that will be delivered. And so that's being pushed out across the years.
So a more sort of wider question then probably to Jess, sort of just as you're the lead here on this, is around the amount of money that the savings that haven't been achieved in previous years. So what's your understanding of the position that you're currently in? So have you got confidence that the savings, the new savings proposals, they will be achieved as in across the piece? Or are you saying that in previous years, I don't know, I can't remember, to be honest, what percentage of these sort of savings proposals just aren't going to be deliverable for one reason or another? Changes, different things happen, you know, there's always going to be something happening, isn't there? Nothing stays certain. So it's just really for us as members to understand, out of the full budget that you have, and around that savings that you're being requested to make, what proportion of your budget is now under that savings, and how much of that savings are you particularly thinking, okay, out of X amount, we'll probably make 40%, 80%, 90%. What's your confidence rate on that? Thank you.
So, I mean, it's tricky to give a percentage, because for the digital together savings, although they are sort of detailed under my banner, I think one of the reasons why they have been tricky to deliver in the past, and I am slightly speculating because I wasn't here, but my impression for some of it is that what we weren't able to do was gain traction with services, because if some of the savings from digitization are around putting in more efficient systems that enable automation of certain processes, that translates to back office staff or a proportion of the activity done by staff in a range of services. If it's about, I don't know, things I've done in other places have been around automation of minutes takings and record keeping in children's social care admin. There's a whole load of business support functions which carry out that work. If you can do something to improve the efficiency and automation of how records are maintained and managed in those areas, that's a proportion of activity of the staff that do that work. So services have to be on board with a change to working practices for how they deliver those services. And I don't think, for whatever reason, those really in-depth sort of culture change and ways of working conversations were had, for whatever reason. I really don't know why. It could be a whole, pressure of other work, a whole range of things. But that, I think, is the task that is needed. And because, you can put in new technology and new digital processes, but savings don't come just from putting in technology. They come from changing the ways that people work. They come from our processes and from the way that people work. And so we need to work really hard with services to make sure that they are up for changing the way they work and for doing things that will use what is ultimately residents' money in our budgets in the most efficient and effective way possible. So that's the reason for reprofiling it, is one, to give us that time to work with services across the council to understand where there are opportunities for more efficient ways of working, and to plan out any reductions in costs in ways that are, you know, humane and provide dignity for the staff involved as well, because there will be anxiety about from staff if those sorts of things are being talked about. And you know, it's a complex thing to deliver. So it's not really a proportion of my budget. These are savings that are corporate savings, and we need to work right across the council on ways of working to deliver those. The other reason for the reprofiling and for delivering at a later stage is that we need to make some investment. So some of the you know, the things around an improved resident experience can only come if we make some proper investment in our digital infrastructure, and so we need to do that before we can then look at any sort of reductions in how customer services are delivered, because it needs to be a better experience for residents, is the absolute driver. And so that's the focus for the digital programme, is to make those things and to do the kind of things that Councillor Chandwani was talking about around prevention, are enabled by you know, officers in different services being able to have access to understand residents' situations across a range of things. So a resident might come to a housing officer in distress about financial problems that they've got. It might not only be their rent, they might be in financial difficulties with their utilities, and they might be in financial difficulties paying their council tax. So they, you know, the officers who are in, you might be a housing officer, need to be able to understand and take action to deal with the financial problems that are held in other systems. We can only do that if we have a decent infrastructure that enables interaction between different systems, and for different officers to be able to see some of that information and give good advice to residents. So all of those things require significant cross-council working and good digital infrastructure. But I'm really confident that we can deliver that investment, and that will then enable us to have a much more clear pattern of where real savings are possible, and that will give the confidence I think members are rightly seeking.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to the appendices, because I think a lot of what you're saying comes up again in the appendices as well. But just from what I've just heard from you, I think I can completely understand about investing and getting that culture change and needing to ensure that happens before you can see where those changes possibly could be made and where any savings could happen. So I think a question that will come up as we go through the new savings proposals, but not for you to now, as we go through, I think will be that challenge from us is, well, do you think these savings now can be made at this juncture? Bearing in mind everything that's already been said tonight. So we'll go on to Appendix C, which are the new revenue savings proposals. And we'll start with the customer services and library services review. That is on page, it should be 125, I think, in the agenda pack. Yeah, or Appendix C if you're just clicking on the PDF. So customer services and library savings review. Have any of the members got any questions they've got around this particular saving? We've heard a lot about the digital offer tonight. So is there anything? No. Councillor White.
Thanks. Yeah. Just to clarify, when it talks about manual processing of online forms, is that what I'm trying to find the text now in the actual papers and read my own handwriting? I just wanted to check. This is about people who are already filling in a form online, but somehow this is being done manually, rather than this is a withdrawal of the ability of people rather than withdrawal of a facility for people to submit a form manually if they don't have online access. Is that right?
Jess?
Yeah, Yes, absolutely. And Andy can talk a bit about the operational sort of side of this, but the principle is that one of the bits of investment that was done was to create online access, sort of to make requests online through the website for people who are able to do that. But what was not done was the joining up of those requests into all of our different back office systems. So somebody makes a request to, I don't know, book a tennis court or pay a parking fine or buy a residence permit or anything else. They don't all immediately integrate that request into the back office system. And so customer services for some of these processes have to manually enter that information into the systems. And that creates, I think it's 30% of the work of the customer services team is doing that kind of so it's about automating those, making a join up between what residents are doing, which is a digital request for service, and making it an automated flow through into all of our systems without the need for re-entering by back office staff. But Andy or Councillor Chandwani might want to add.
Chair, is it all right if I just give 2 examples and then that might clarify it? Because we're definitely...
Yeah, so if you do that briefly and then Andy can come in and then yeah.
At the moment, if you were to report a fly tip, the most digitally effective way to do that would be to use the Love Clean Streets app because it's fully automated. So the minute that you click, you send the picture in, that already goes on the schedule to somebody who does the schedule of picking it up. So there's no person involved because that will then, when they get up in the morning, they go to the office, they'll see all the list of jobs and the technology behind the app would already put it in order of which is the best way to get it, see the photograph and it's all there and it's all digital and it's all perfect. If a resident was to report the same fly tip using our online form on our website, it will require a human being to get an email of that form and then send it to Veolia and then give them the information, and then Veolia would have to then manually put it on. So the technology we're using on our website is basically e-forms, and what we're hoping to move towards is that the very similar thing that you get from the Love Clean Streets app will kind of automatically happen, so people can kind of GDPR use GPS and then click their thing and it will go straight into whatever system any department's using. And it's complex because, as you saw when we went through the parking IT, for those of you that are in environment, they all fit into different systems, so we've got to kind of make that spider web work.
Okay, that sounds very helpful. I've got Councillor White nodding. So Andy, did you want to add anything at this point?
That was very well put. I was only going to add that I fully understand where members can get a little anxious with this, and I often talk about contact of choice, and we absolutely recognise there will always be a cohort of residents that will probably need to see us in person and may need to come in to see us and submit something. That will exist. If we really get this right, contact of choice will become live and people will choose to do exactly what Councillor Chandwani has just described and Jess has just described. And those that might want to come in because they're just not familiar with doing that can do that for other means as well.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a quick follow-up question on Councillor White's point. So on phase 1 on that, you've got a reduction in 4 posts. Is that the 300,000 in the no? Okay, so Jess has come back on that.
Yeah.
And then the second point, listening to what you've already said, if you want someone who is in person to help that person who doesn't want to do it online for whatever reason or can't do it online and actually may have more complex requests, are you saying that we're going to be training up the staff that are left who will be doing face-to-face so they are more experienced in sort of making sure that things are put across the whole piece? Or is that just going to be all digitalised and that member of staff can literally just sit there, put in that request, as Councillor Chandwani has almost sort of alluded to, and then it will then go to all the right different departments and they will all join that up? So Jess, just to get a bit of clarity.
Yeah, just to explain the sequencing. So the 300k in year one is the library's saving, and I'm sure we'll come on to that. The resident services savings are in years 2 and 3, to give us that time to make the investment, drive the culture change and improved ways of working before we look at, and the improved resident experience before we look at taking staff out. So that's why the resident services changes savings are all in the last 2 years of the period. So that's the 4 posts in year 2 and 4 posts in year 3. And on your second point, the customer relationship management system is really the thing that it's the sort of game changer, really, that will absolutely enable staff to do exactly as has been described by Councillor Chandwani, and the point you make in your question is that, you know, any member of staff ought to be able to process and help a resident access a form and get it put immediately into a system, you know, directly without any, you know, it's not about filling in an extra form that then gets with a CRM. And it also makes it much simpler for staff, so that staff don't have to be trained in the intricacies of whatever specific service-based application or system different services use, which will have these systems will have many uses that, you know, parking officers will get, you know all of the intricacies of all of their systems. Revs and Bens people know the intricacies of their systems. Housing officers know the intricacies, but for customer services, they don't need to know all of that system. They just need to be able to get a request into the system easily and simply, and it's in the same way that a resident does. And a CRM is that kind of front level interface, to use a bit of jargon, but you know, between the resident or the customer services officer, or indeed any officer, and those back office more complex systems. It's the way in, and so putting that in place will make it much easier for those transactions to be carried out by any frontline member of staff, you know, ultimately. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jess. That's really helpful. And I think, can we just have some clarity then around the 300,000 on the library service? So I read there's many points within this. Which of these areas is going to be generating this 300,000 in 2023-24?
Yeah. So it's a mixture of a range of savings that we believe are possible from a sort of service review that Flo's carried out, and she can maybe speak to some of the detail. But it's partly system and maintenance savings that we can make as a result of the investment that we've made in the new library management system. So because our new library management system takes us into a consortium with other authorities across London, we gain access to their stock. And so if a resident wants to borrow a book that we don't have in our stock, we don't have to buy it. We can get it through an interlibrary loan and get it from any of the other libraries that have it. So it massively opens up. So we can take some money out of our own stock replenishment budget. And obviously we will still retain a stock replenishment budget of our own to keep our own stock live and up to date, but we don't need to invest as much. So, and similarly, we're putting a reasonable amount of capital investment into our libraries to get their maintenance up to date. That means we can reduce some of the maintenance budget that we've been carrying for like day-to-day repairs, where we've got old electrical systems or whatever, or things that have needed, you know, patch repairs. So there's a range of those sorts of savings which are we believe are prudent and deliverable really very easy, and that's about half of the 300k. The remainder is from library, looking at the library staffing budget, and from looking at how we deliver our home library service. I know Flo's had some conversations in the last few days about how we're going to deliver that, so it might be worth her giving a bit of an update on progress with those changes. But the 300k is a mix of staffing reductions and changes, and those kind of changes to some of the maintenance budgets.
Okay, so I've got to. Did you want to come in before Flo?
Well, whenever.
Are you doing libraries?
On the she'd see.
Oh, yeah. So we'll just finish on the libraries and then so Flo, if you want to come in very briefly, but obviously just very quickly, I think just really to reassure members that in any staffing changes, we're not going to get a reduction in either the opening or the servicing of the libraries. I think just to be sort of that level of clarity, I think I'm sure there's a lot of detail in the review that you've just done, but I think it's really for us as members to understand about that staffing savings.
Okay, I can reassure you there won't be any changes in that. What we are doing is looking at different ways of delivering. For example, at the home library service, we're looking to integrate it within the rest of the team. So we'll still be delivering a home library service, but we will be doing it more as a team, as opposed to having a separate team sitting elsewhere and not in libraries. So that's what we're going to do with the home library service. And also the changes as a team will enable us to introduce a business manager that will help us better organise our resources in our libraries. As Jess said, we really do have long hours. We're not looking to reduce them. We just need to be more efficient in the way we allocate resources. And by changing the development manager role into a business manager role, that will enable us to achieve that.
Sorry, Flo, I think it's me, but the sound quality wasn't brilliant. So I'm just going to just ask you to just move slightly closer to the mic if possible, and just give us a quick snippet of what you just said.
Okay.
Sorry, just sorry,
No.
I'm sure it's me. I just can't hear very well.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Just quite
Is that
muffled.
better? Okay, all right, just to reassure you, we're not going to reduce the opening hours. All services will continue to be delivered. We will just be delivering them in a different way. For example, the home library service won't be a standalone service. It will be integrated into the wider team. So there'd be more of a team effort in making sure that we continue to deliver to our residents. But we won't be reducing our delivery offer to residents. Was that better?
I think we heard.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
if it's helpful, Chair, just to emphasise what Flo's saying is that the home library service will be delivered by integrating that separate standalone team within the main library service. And in the main library service, we have a number of vacancies filled by agency and bank staff. So we're looking to replace those with those permanent members of staff by integrating the mobile library service team with it into the main library service. So, this is not about, causing redundancies. It's about just making the staffing complement, filled with proper permanent members of staff. So that's the way we're going to do it. It won't lead to changes in library opening hours or service delivery.
Thank you. No, thank you very much. So I've got Councillor Gunners again on the libraries, and then we'll move on to the next bit. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick clarification. It says after the phase 1 is implemented, which is in 2024 to 25, it will be a reduced number of posts in customer services by 4 as a result of reducing manual processing volumes. So basically by adapting smarter new technological way of doing things to increase efficiency, we are inevitably reducing reason for people to, posts or people to, where it's impacting on librarians' job as well. So I just wanted to kind of how is that going to be, what will happen to, then we are kind of then effectively moving into a library where technology, we are able to, that traditional library setting where we go there, there's librarian, there's, if you have an issue, you ask, or you ask for assistance. And yeah, I'm actually not happy that I welcome the, attempt to make things more efficient, but at what cost? And yeah.
Councillor Connor, is it possible? I think, Matt Boulay, the way that the report has been structured is that it said at the top, customer service and libraries review, and then the first item has talked about cut in services, a cut of staff of 4, but that it actually only relates to customer services. It's not librarians or any library staff. So I guess we could have written the report a bit clearer, so that it should have separated library stuff and then customer service stuff.
Okay, so no, that's fine. I wanted a clarity anyways. So you clarify that that's not related to, that's in customer services post, not the libraries. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to sort of go, I appreciate the detailed responses that we've been getting, but I'm just going to ask for a bit more sort of a shorter and briefer sort of answer, just because it's 8 o'clock already and we're still only on the first appendix. So we're just going to sort of just slightly, yeah, keep it a little bit tighter, if that's okay with everyone. So the next one we've got is the additional commercial advertising opportunities. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so on this saving, just a couple of quick questions of clarification. First of all, what is carbon purifying technology? I don't know what that is, so a bit of explanation of that would be helpful. And then going down to the last item, a bit of an better explanation of what urban hubs are would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Jess, are you happy to take that as just sort of a brief sort of explanation of those two?
Yeah, I can try. Claire McCarthy is on the call. I think. Hopefully, I'm hoping she hasn't frozen. I can see her avatar, but not her. But
I'm
so.
here.
Oh, you are here. Brilliant. Yes, I wasn't sure. Here. So Claire might be able to talk a bit in a bit more detail about this. To be fair, rather than in the interests of brevity, it's probably not worth me trying to stumble through it.
Okay, Claire, over to you.
Thanks, Councillor Collar. I hope that you can see me. I do have my camera on. Oh, that's bizarre. Okay, apologies. No. I have got my camera on. Anyway, I'll just briefly. Essentially, the air purifying is the some of the kind of players in the market. What we're talking about here is a large screen for advertising, and some of the market players have technology embedded within that screen that actually does, as it says, really air purifying from the air around it, whilst it's just kind of there on the building and turned on. And so therefore, you know, that's something that comes as a sort of additional benefit alongside the main purpose of the screen, which is just for advertising, and in our case would generate an income for the council. So it's just a facet of some of the screens that the market providers have created. So that's on that. And the second point on urban hubs, really it's a generic term which is about kind of resources that you can put on the street or in a car park that are of benefit to residents or provide services. So that can be, as described here, anything from the we buy any car sort of lockers that you see, sort of you know, almost like what are they called? Oh, I've lost my word. You know, like sheds almost of tin.
Amazon collection
yes.
Lockers.
Or the Amazon collection lockers, or other non-Amazon providers where you can get your deliveries sent to. It also includes things like electric vehicle charging and the like. So it's really just sort of services that residents can access, and their generic term for them is urban hubs.
So just to clarify on the urban hubs, it's basically using it's using council land, council's owned spaces in the borough, kind of renting them out to commercial concerns and generating money in that way. And yes. Second clarification on the on the carbon purifying technology. When it says carbon purifying technology, then you're saying it's using carbon to clean the air rather than that it's cleaning carbon from the air and fighting climate change. It's the first one. It's using carbon to clean the air. Yeah.
I would say I would need to confirm, and I imagine the exact technology might be different with different providers. My understanding is it's essentially air purifying. So whether this is a loose use of language or whether it uses carbon to do that, I couldn't tell you. I can follow up with you on that, Councillor White, if it's helpful on the absolute specifics.
Thanks. Just yeah, but that's fine. And then yeah, and I think you confirmed that what I said that about the urban hubs. Yeah, you confirmed that. So
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry, I realised I was nodding, but you can't see me. But yes, absolutely, you're right. It's exactly as you characterise. That's a much better way of putting it than I did.
Okay, so can I just ask on that one very quickly? We've obviously had this previously as savings proposal in the past. Has it generated the savings that we anticipated as council, or have there been, basically has it lived up to expectations, or is this a different approach to all the other digital advertising proposed savings proposals we've had in the past?
So it's two different, I think, things. So we are doing advertising, as you know, for instance, on Wood Green High Road with a partner called Clear Channel, and that does already generate income for us. And it generated in the last financial year, in the current financial year, slightly less than we originally anticipated, partly as a result of the impact of the pandemic and also the economic sort of slowdown that resulted from that. But it does continue to bring us a good income, and the small platform element of this really builds from that. There was previously, I understand, an MTFS saving proposed around a larger format screen of the type envisaged here. But that was never taken forward for various reasons. Again, I think due to the pandemic, but other reasons. And so this would be whilst this is a new commitment, and we haven't actually in practice tried before, but we would anticipate it generating the income that is that is envisaged here.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you. That's helpful. Okay, so I'm going to move swiftly on. Yvonne, obviously, if you want to raise your hand up at all to ask a question, please do, and I'll bring you in. So I'm just going to wait to see if you and your lovely dog there, wave a paw. So we're on the improved debt recovery. Have anyone got any questions on libraries? Oh, Councillor Bevan's going to ask a question on the libraries.
Well, first thing is just a comment on the maintenance reduction. I'm a little bit concerned about that because I see that at George Meehan House, where we have a really stunning building, and I can already see signs of neglect by not attending to maintenance issues that I noticed when I come around this building. So our libraries have all been refurbished or are in the process of being refurbished, and I would hope that we keep that standard all the time and we don't neglect the maintenance, as I see happening here. So it's just an observation, really, that we don't give up on that because we've got this savings target. So it's just an observation. And then the other thing is that it's sort of connected with the hubs. I remember a year or two ago, we had a huge saving for the libraries by renting out all their rooms, which never happened. It just didn't happen at all. It completely failed. So I'm just wondering, what system have we got now, or have we got a system where it's easy for a member of the public or an organisation to go online, book a room? Because I think personally, from my experience, it's a complete nightmare for anyone who wants to do this, and obviously that produces money. I'm not sure whether it's included in any of these financial figures for this year, but have we got a user-friendly system where any room or any facility in our libraries can be booked easily?
If I take that, so the new libraries management system has the capacity to do that, and that's one of the things that we've been developing. So whereas we needed a new library management system to kind of manage our stock and the basic library service, the system that we have bought does create an opportunity to do that more user-friendly booking of spaces in libraries. So that is something that we'll be developing over this year. So we do, although we haven't achieved some of the more ambitious savings that were proposed to come from renting out spaces in libraries. And I think I spoke to that at the beginning as one of the savings that we're writing out, because it involved very, very ambitious increases in the revenue to be generated from hiring out space in the libraries, some of which spaces are no longer available. We do still achieve revenue from renting out space in libraries, and through a combination of the new system and making our more spaces in the libraries available and attractive through some of the refurbishment works, that is anticipated to grow slightly, but not to the extent that was envisaged in those original savings, which, as I say, we believe were unachievable. But Flo might have the figures exactly to hand, but we make, I think it's around about 250k is an existing revenue target that we believe we can make. There was a very significant increase proposed for those about 3 years ago. Obviously, that was also proposed to come in at a time when libraries were not open during the pandemic, and so it's just not realistic anymore. But we do believe that the income target we have is achievable, particularly through using the new system to make it easier for people to book, exactly as you say.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the improved debt recovery, we've already had a conversation around the the pressure on our residents and them getting into debt. So I was actually just trying to understand this, what was actually being suggested in this proposal. I couldn't quite understand whether it was are we making savings by actually accessing or allowing people to pay off the debts more easily to the council, improving that service, or are we saying we're actually going to chase more residents to recover debt because you've got improved systems of working out who's indebted to us, or I just couldn't quite understand from this proposal how this was going to work. So I know I've asked you to be brief, and this is a difficult one to be brief in, but if you could try, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
So go straight to Andy or Councillor Chanwadi.
Just to let you know that my my husband really wants to watch The Apprentice by 9 o'clock, so he's also told me to be brief. This is sundry debt. And so what that covers is things like allotments, pest control, commercial rent, hall hires. So people that we then invoice. What happens is at the moment is everything is quite manual. So if you hired a hall, just say in one of our libraries, and then we invoiced you and you didn't pay, it's waiting for a human being to realise that that hasn't actually been paid, and then to get a piece of paper, and then probably a few months later send you a reminder, and it becomes you lose complete control by that stage because people just don't know what's happened. It could have been lost in the post. They don't remember. They phone up. They're saying, "What is this about? We paid it," and then it goes manual. So this is about getting a IT system that kind of automatically triggers that something hasn't been paid in the 30 working days, and then sends out a letter, and then it will know from a reference number if it has been paid, because people will pay using that reference number, and then if it hasn't, then it will chase you again, etc. But at the moment it's all just been done by a group of people doing this quite manually, like it's 1986.
Okay, thank you. So the concern that, sorry, somebody's hand's up. Oh, Yvonne's hand up. Yvonne, do you want to come in on this point on the debt?
No, not on the debt.
Okay, I'll just finish this one, and then is that all right, Yvonne?
Okay.
Sorry, I'll
Yeah,
just finish this point, and then we'll go straight to you. So the bit that I'm not sure about then is the £365,000 that's been allocated as the saving. Have we actually got any indication? Has there been any work done to say this is what you're going to recover using this new system? Or is this a hope? Because I know you've got a £1 million debt held on SAP under the query category. Are you looking at that and thinking, well, this is a rough guess that we're going to get a certain percentage of that debt back. I'm just not sure where those figures have come from. Sorry, just I'm not sure who would like to take that.
Andy.
Councillor Connor, yes, and yes. So we do have the £1 million. This is built into the finance papers as well. We're, if I'm honest, already on this journey. This work is already underway and we are seeing positive results already. So we've put those projections in to improve the bad debt provision over coming years, and that's what you see in that report, and put a percentage of that in there for the sundry debt. And Councillor Chimwani was right. The sundry debtors are miscellaneous debt, which is a very wide range of debts, predominantly business company. At best, if it gets to an individual level, it's, as Councillor Chimwani has said, allotments and garages and things like that. We have other mechanisms for council tax benefits, welfare, and other debt.
Okay, thanks, Andy. That's really helpful. Okay, I'll finish that bit there. Yvonne, did you want to come in?
Yes. I used to use St Anne's Library ever such a lot. You know, every week I take the children in there, but unfortunately, of late, it's been very difficult. I've had to change the library because they seem to have some sort of club going on there, and all the children go in through the library, and sometimes they play chase around the racks and everything, and it's homework. That's the reason I took them there, because it was quiet. But unfortunately, I've had to move because I moved to Tottenham Green, but now that's closed because there's a problem down there. So, you know, it means that I've got to go further afield if I want to use the library. Surely the staff that are there should be controlling this and keeping the children under control, or speaking to the people that are supposed to be looking after them out in the hall. So
Thanks,
I wondered
Yvonne.
if anyone could do us mums round here that have had to give up.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful to know. I think if we could take this offline, Jess, are you happy to take this up with Yvonne directly? Because I think that's a specific question, isn't it, around activities within a library, and that would be really helpful if someone could get back to Yvonne. Yvonne, are you happy with that if you get a response from officers?
Yes, if somebody
after
can
the
do
meeting?
something, because it'd be nice to use it again.
Sure, no, that's a good
Yeah.
point to make. Thanks, Yvonne.
Thanks, dear.
Okay, no, that's really helpful. Thank you. So we're on to the single person's discount review. I know Councillor Bevan has a question on that.
Yeah, when I first looked at it, I thought we was actually reducing the discount for every single person, but obviously that's not the case. So 1,900 doesn't seem many compared to the size of the council tax paying single people. And also, how are we going to identify these 1,900? Is there a system, or is it sort of a wish list?
I'll answer that. So I guess firstly, we're trying to be as realistic as possible. So 1,900 is a realistic target, and we might do better. Secondly, what this isn't about is kind of chasing people, especially when our residents are facing hardship. But just to give quickly in 30 seconds my own experience, my fiance, now husband, moved in with me. I've always had single person discount since I moved here in 97. I didn't know how I got the single person discount. It sort of just happened when I moved in here when I was 18. But I can tell you that it was a bit of a struggle trying to give it back. I'm not going to lie, I searched the internet, I couldn't figure it out. I thought, how do I give this money back? I want to give 25% back. And luckily I'm a counsellor, so I phoned up David Graft and said, I need to give you this 25% back. And then somebody from the team realigned everything. That's mad. You know, people get married all the time. People's kids turn 18 all the time. People have a lodger moving into their house all the time. And to do something like give us 25% of their council tax should be a really simple, easy process. And we should communicate more about when people should do it. Because I think some of the people that we're now chasing for council tax debt is we find out a few years later that actually your child turned 18 and now they're 21, but you owe us 3 years full of single person discount, and then people get into debt. So there's a whole piece of work there done to encourage, to make sure it's easier, to make sure that people understand what the single person discount is and when they should be giving it back. And we're hoping from that we will see. After that, after we get through that first cohort, then there's a conversation probably in the next MTFS to talk about how we follow up with people that we know are deliberately fraudulent, and they're quite well aware that they shouldn't be doing this, but they are. But I think that's a different conversation for a bit further down. At the moment, there are people like me that are desperate to give back their 25% and couldn't do it.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor White.
Yeah, thanks. Just following up on this. So just on how this is actually going to look in practice. I'm assuming from what you've said, Seema, that the proposal is basically we look at these other forms of information. We think, oh, this person may well be actually not entitled to the single person's discount they're receiving, and then we write to them and give them the opportunity to agree with that. And what we're not doing is looking at the evidence, thinking, yeah, we think this person probably isn't entitled to it, and just removing it and let them complain. Because I can just imagine that our assumptions might not be right. So we're not just preemptively removing the discount. We're giving people kind of an opportunity to do what you did, Seema.
Absolutely. I'll let Andy come in, but another example is my brother and sister both have the same surname, and Enfield Council assumed they were married, and they weren't. And so therefore their entitlement to what they were entitled to for council tax was different. And for them to had that opportunity to explain that they weren't married and that they're actually siblings, then solved a massive problem of them not being debt chased. But I'll let Andy kind of describe the process a bit more.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. And it is along the lines as Councillor Chamwani has described. Clearly, we need to collect as much council tax as we possibly can, but just by identifying that a registered address might have 2 cars registered in 2 separate names doesn't necessarily mean they're trying to defraud us. So we would make contact and be inquisitive about, actually, is this correct? There are other forms that we would look through in terms of electoral roll, and we're required to engage with the National Fraud Register as well in terms of information that we get back from that. So in doing that, we'd always make contact to establish the position first, and then in that dialogue, if there has been a period of time where there has been that situation in play, then we would look to get those arrangements in place with those individuals. We've done.
Okay.
There was a question very quickly. There was a question on, I think, how have we established the numbers? We have benchmarked with some of the authorities. I think the most recent one off the top of my head was Brent, and we formed some of our numbers around what they had achieved over the course of the year as well.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to ask the panel before we move on. We will be speeding up as we go through the other appendices, but are there any recommendations that we wish to make as part of this? Because these are the new savings proposals. So is there anything these are the new revenue savings proposals? Is there anything either on the library's proposal, customer services, the advertising, or the debt recovery, or the single person discount that we wish to? Yep.
Can I just come back on the single person discount, because the council tax form that goes out, the section about the single person discount doesn't stand out at all. It's basically just amongst all the other text. There's a huge opportunity there, whether you put a coloured leaflet in it or just that issue should be dealt with really prominently in the letter, or as I say, it should have a completely brightly coloured separate leaflet, because at the moment there's no emphasis really on that point at all, other than just a bit of general text, which probably loads of people don't probably read or take much notice of. It's just an observation.
I think that's an
Okay, well,
amazing
that's a useful
thing, yeah.
action. Yeah,
That's
okay,
really
so that's a
helpful.
useful
Thank you.
action to sort of put down, is if that could be added in, and that would be useful. I'm just coming back to any of the other recommendations surrounding the finance part. So on the savings, are people happy with the sort of savings put forward? And are there any concerns that you want to put up now? Because obviously this comes back in a week's time and we get that chance to sort of ask officers, was everyone happy with? Yeah. Okay. Okay, for me, the one that I've got is on the commercial advertising. I just think I absolutely find that this is going to, it seems like a sort of very organised proposal. I think it's just about the amount of money that we're going to generate. I think it's just about the confidence on that for myself, that we've, that is going to bring in the sort of money that we're hoping for. So that's the concern that I've got at the moment. It's not a recommendation, it's just a note, I think, on that recommendation, that might be more difficult. Councillor Bevan.
Well, I'm not happy with commercial advertising on the side of our vehicles. I think if we advertise on our vehicles, it should be our own services or our own contact points. And as I'm reading this, I think I picked up that we were planning to sell the side of our vans. I'm not happy with that at all. I think we should advertise our own services, our own contact points, if we're going to do anything on our vehicles. So I don't know what other people think.
I agree.
Oh, Councillor Simmons-Sappho.
Oh, sorry. I think I agree with you 100%. I believe that there's other ways of generating money, and I think it's just distasteful. That's my opinion. I think that we can do other things to generate money. I think that if it's the council, we have to brand our own self in a way that's not going to be reputationally damaging. I think it leaves us exposed to, say we've got an advert on from Joe Bloggs, the builder, and then afterwards he does something really terrible. Someone's only going to affiliate the van to Carringay Council and the partnership working that we have. I think it's too dangerous, and I think that we really shouldn't be doing it.
Councillor White.
Thanks. So I wouldn't be happy with a recommendation to not do this, because I think, I'm likewise, like both of you, I don't like the idea very much of having commercial advertising on council vehicles. However, we do need to find income. We do need to balance the budget. Perhaps you would be happy with a recommendation regarding what kind of policy the council has about who is permitted to advertise on this. That obviously there's regard is paid to the type of advertisers. Maybe priority is given to local businesses. I don't know, something like that. But I wouldn't be happy with a recommendation that said no advertising on commercial on council vehicles, because I just don't think we're in a position to give up on that revenue making opportunity.
I think the cost is more than financial, and it does make me very anxious. I think, is there any other way that we can generate money apart from putting something on the side of a van?
So I'm just going to go to officers now then. So I'm going to ask, is it possible? Oh, yes, certainly. I'm just going to ask if we could split this out and look at the finances specifically around the fleet, because that's the bit that I think is causing the concern from colleagues here. Councillor Guinness.
Yeah, I was going to obviously say, first of all, it's completely, there is no legal implication, like it's completely legitimate to do that. Like Haringey Council by advertising things on there, it's Haringey, Homes for Haringey's ban is not putting on itself under any kind of difficult position. Secondly, I think very much similar to Councillor White, I'm actually of the opinion that the reason, I mean, desperate time require desperate measures kind of approach. We really need to be raising money. I mean, there are other areas that the council could potentially generate a huge amount of money from, you know, using the billboards and they just like all those avenues to generate income. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, but maybe, yeah, the Homes for Haringey's buses or vehicles is a bit step too far, maybe.
So I'll make a suggestion and I'll come back to Councillor Simon-Saffo to comment on what I'm saying and see what your thoughts are. So if we ask for officers for the next week, so we put in a note at this point that there is concerns around the fleet, particularly being advertised. If we could have financial information around how much income that is potentially going to generate. I mean, obviously officers will have done some workings out anyway on what sort of income they think this is going to generate. And then also, is there any way of any oversight of how that is then, you know, taken forward? So as Councillor Simon-Saffo said, you know, if an organisation that we weren't that keen on asked to, you know, put an advertisement on our fleet, would we then have any legal comeback? Who makes those decisions? I think is kind of, you know, and I'm going to go back to Councillor Simon-Saffo, but I'm just wondering to the committee if that's something that we can then look at, get the information on, and then make a decision next week if we're not. Okay, Councillor Simon-Saffo.
I would like to add that I'm all for billboards and all those things, but the van just seems close to home. I just think it's too personal. That is the dependent variable for me. It's not the advertising in itself. There's billboards, we have buildings, but the vans are very highly visible in the whole of the community. And it's just, I just think that there's how much money are they bringing in for it? Is it, you know, if it's 10 billion, then I'll say, yeah, put it on there. But if it ain't, forget it, mate.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to note that there are concerns from the committee around this as a specific, part of this item. So we're asking for more information to come through, and then we can take it at the budget on next Thursday. Are people happy with that?
Sorry, Chair. Is it all right if I make a suggestion? We actually already do this on the Veolia trucks. So maybe one of the things we can do for next week is also to present to you that we do this. So the last thing that I think we advertised on the side of the Veolia trucks was COVID vaccines from the NHS, and I think they paid for that. So if that could, I think I can get that information to Claire, but it's not something new to this borough.
Okay, so if you could give us that information, that would be helpful. I'm going to have to move this on, but I'm going to take Councillor Bevan very quickly, Councillor Simon-Saffo, and then we're going to have to close this one. And otherwise, all the other appendices, well, I'm sure we're going to be generating lots more.
I take up the point which Councillor Chandrani said in relation to Viola, but Viola everybody knew it wasn't Haringey. They knew that they were a commission place. It didn't have our logo all over it. Do you understand? So that's the only thing that the concern I have is that it is Haringey, and the concern I have is that sometimes, you know, it's probably the governance surrounding it as well. What policies are we going to have in place to ensure that the organizations are watertight and reputable before you actually affiliate yourself to it? Because it can go quite belly up You know, I'm all for adverts, and things, but I don't know, I just feel a bit apprehensive about that.
I
Sorry.
think we've got that very clearly on record. So I think that's going to be taken away by officers, and we'll get that information, and then we can make the decision next week based on. So Appendix D, we are going to be taking Appendix D as a whole. So we've got on that, we've got libraries, benefit service, base budget pressures. That's the first area to anyone to ask questions on.
What page?
Appendix D. So in the agenda, are you going through appendices or the agenda pack? Yeah, libraries and benefit services base budget pressure. So this basically is about new revenue growth proposals, which we've had that conversation already with officers today. We've got the low income family tracker system, and then we've got the electoral register print and postage costs. So this is an area of new revenue growth proposals. So are there any issues or concerns that members have on any of these coming up?
Yeah, on all the items on this agenda, on all the.
Yeah, so yeah, so you've got libraries and benefit services, the base budget pressure. So you've got the structural budget pressure, you've got the staffing, so then you've got the money coming in on that. Has anyone got any questions they want to ask or any concerns they have?
You can't find it, can you?
Yvonne, it's on Appendix D. It's following on for them from the previous appendix. It should be on in your agenda pack. Philip, what page is it?
Page 129.
Page 129. Thank you, Francis.
Okay, thank you. Oh. I can't read it anyway.
So one question I'm going to quickly ask then on the libraries and benefits. So you've got the money going in 2023-24, and then it looks like money coming out or savings being made. Is that correct on this table? The following year, 24-25, is 184,000. Jess, just to clarify what that's actually telling us.
Yeah, just to clarify, this is the point I made earlier about basically catching up our base budget with the reduction in grants. So it's sort of right sizing the base budget to deal with the fact that we've lost government grant for processing housing benefit, and we're losing the grant at a faster rate than our actual number of housing benefit claims is reducing. So the claims are reducing, and that's why we think the money can come out in subsequent years. But we're sort of reducing it on a sort of sliding scale relating to the actual reduction in the number of claims to be processed, and therefore the work required, rather than what the government thinks the reduction rate is, which, as I say, they've taken the money out quicker than our actual number of claims is going in. So this deals with an ongoing overspend pressure that we've had in benefits all this year, but we say the money will be able to be taken out in subsequent years as the work reduces.
That's fine for me. Anyone got anything on the low income family tracker system? Again, I thought that was quite obvious, but if anyone's got anything they want to sort of raise. No, okay. And then anything on the electoral registration print and postage costs? No, okay. I think those were all very self-explanatory, and so thank you very much for those. So there's no recommendations on that. So we're going swiftly on to Appendix E, which is the agreed savings tracker. So yeah, so this is the one with the RAG ratings that you have in front of you. Jess, just to be really clear, is this the bit that you're saying that these proposals have been taken out, or are you saying that some of them are going to be re-provisioned in following years? So on the red rag, so you've got FOBO A6.3.
Yeah, so it's a mixture. So the two that are red ragged, the FOBO and library savings, are the ones that are being taken out completely as undeliverable. The digital together one at the end, the larger one, is the one that we've reprofiled to be delivered over a longer time frame. And the HR old savings are there as being delivered. I think the comms one, I mean, Claire might be able to add to this, but I think, you know, that's one that is just, it's gradually building up. So it's as amber in that it hasn't delivered as quickly as we had anticipated, but we're confident of getting there eventually. So that's more a sort of slippage point than anything else. But the red ones are the ones that are being removed as now undeliverable.
So I'll just ask a very quick question whilst I'm waiting for others to come. This is just a note. So things like FOBO and SSC, if there's any chance of just not putting acronyms at that point, it's just on the off chance that we have residents out there who are glued to their sets at the moment, watching this and thinking, well, what is that? I think if we could just do that, that's just really helpful, especially when it's there looks like there's a little bit of space there to add in. Thank you. Any questions? Hang on a second, John, I've just got to check. So I'm just going to check with other councillors because there's the red, amber and green. Are everyone happy? Well, I won't say happy, but it is what it is. Yeah, I think that's quite, and I think the fact that the two red ones have been removed, I think that gives us some sort of confidence. I think that, you know, when things aren't deliverable, we're not keep chasing things that aren't going to happen, and actually they've just been removed from the process. Okay, the advertising one we've done anyway, and digital together we've already spoken at quite extensively, so I'm happy to move on this unless anyone's got anything. No. Okay, so Appendix F, which is the next one along, so it's new capital for the 2023-24 MCFS programme, description of capital bids. So these are the new capital bids. I'm going to start off very quickly by saying, as we've done in every other scrutiny panel, the confidence obviously around any capital borrowing, and you've got London Borough of Harrogate borrowing against all of these proposals, is that obviously with the increasing interest rates now and the increased cost of borrowing and the increased cost of just, you know, trying to get anything workforce to come out and do things and all the bits that go with that. What's the, I know some of this is digital laptops, but what's the expectation that this is going to remain at this cost that's been given to us, or is there an expectation? Is there anything built into these figures to sort of mitigate for high rates of borrowing, or, you know, more expensive laptops, for instance?
So, I mean, these are really provisions rather than sort of specific schemes. It's a provision for what we think we will need. I mean, I think the real answer is that if laptops go up significantly in price, we will just have to either buy fewer of them or come back for further things. So these are all sort of provisions for refreshing and keeping up to date our digital estate. We have quite a tight contract management system in digital in terms of this sort of management of our technology estate. They're constantly looking for the best and cheapest ways to kind of to purchase and maintain our estate, you know, including I mean, it's constantly being looked at. So, you know, something we've had, you know, purchasing from abroad. We manage some contracts in dollars, so we've had to deal with the exchange rate. So it is a complex and often moving feast in these areas. So it is difficult to say with certainty that this is the, you know, that this is absolutely all there is. But as I say, they're sort of provisions rather than estimates for a single scheme. So that it's a best estimate for the sort of money we think we'll need to enable our laptops, our Microsoft 365 provision and other things to sort of stay up to date as they should, and we'll just kind of manage it pretty tightly. There's quite detailed monitoring of that with capital finance colleagues. So that's how we do it. The one where there really is no uncertainty, because it is a very a more finger in the air provision, is the estimate for the BT big switch off, and this is sort of preparing our estate for moving from analog to sort of fully digital on the back of what BT are planning to do. And the reason it is just an estimate at this stage is because there's not a lot of detail that's come out from BT yet as to what and when and how much, but this is where we rely on analog phone lines for some of our services, and it goes in, as far as sort of emergency telephones in lifts, for example. These are all analog. So there's quite a lot of work that's needed to be done on that to work out the actual cost. This is a kind of an estimate of a provision that we think, we are going to need to spend some significant money on this, on removing all of our outstanding analog phone lines. As I say, we can't be more precise than that at this stage because we don't have the detail from BT. And it's now 2 years away. 2025, I think, is the date they're aiming for. But we await further information from BT, and that will enable us to work up a more properly costed programme.
Okay, thank you. Just looking around at members, if we've got anything specific on any of these proposals. Councillor White.
So on the third one in the list, it says that this bid is to support investigations into the long-term replacement of SAP, which is the accountancy software, I believe. And it says it's just funds to start the investigation.
Yeah.
Seems quite a lot of money for that, really. £200,000 just to start an investigation. So I just wanted a kind of explanation of why the envelope for starting an investigation into replacing a software system is so large. And just the final one, just in terms of like that everybody understands what it's about. This is Microsoft 365, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah.
I was going to ask for clarification on that, actually, because I wasn't particularly clear. But...
Yeah, apologies again for the jargon. Yes, it's Microsoft 365. It's update. We've made a commitment to using Microsoft, and so this is upgrading it to make sure that it's taking the latest version. On the SAP replacement, so our SAP contract runs, I think, till 2027. So we've got some time to carry out an investigation as to whether we want to retain it. Please God, no, would be my sort of basic view on that. But I think the reason for the cost, it's not just sort of starting it is carrying out the investigation as to what we think is the system that we might need. I think the cost of it is, again, it's an estimate. It's probably, well, I would hope it's the upper end, but the SAP system is hugely complex. I suppose it's more than just our accountancy. It manages our sort of payroll, our kind of establishment numbers. So it's a bit of a beast of a system that we've had for some time, because nobody likes to change these systems because it's hugely painful and costly. But we need to really think hard about what the alternative might be, whether this remains the right thing for us to use and what we want to do with it. So I suppose it's more than just replacing a system. It really is thinking about how we manage our workforce data. It's how we manage all the integration with our other payment systems. It's a complex sort of octopus with many tentacles into other bits of the council. So it is a complicated review that's needed to be carried out. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing both from officers and members is that our understanding is that these descriptions of capital bids are quite high level at this moment, because there are a number of them that you haven't actually got you know, more detailed information, i.e. the BT big switch off, you need more information from them around the costs. The ERP, again, it's that beginning of the project, and obviously that will change, and it's not till 2027, you said, but obviously it's the pre-investigation. And there's the other two, again, I think this is obviously, you know, it's a beginning of the process. So I think as members, are we happy to say that we've noted these? Obviously, we've also noted that there are quite high level proposals at the moment, and with the detail that we've got, you know, we can see what you're doing, but we realise that these numbers might change significantly, or may not happen depending on any changes going forward. What do members think? Is that a fair assessment? Or yeah, okay, I'm getting nods from around the table. Right, okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to Appendix G, which are the actual draft capital, which is the actual draft capital programme. At the top, we've got the sources of funding, which is H, Harringay borrowing, S is self-funding, and E is external funding. So I'm just going to throw this open to members. This is the last appendix, you'll be pleased to know. So there's a couple of big items on this. I just wanted to ask members if they wanted to, if anyone wants to ask a question on any of these, or I will start if people are wanting a few moments just to, okay. I'll start on the Civic Centre works, because that's one of the highest figures that I could see on this. Yep. Oh, Francis, sorry, I didn't see you waving at me.
That's okay. I just wanted just a point of clarification for councillors that this is the top section that's not in that sort of the red colour are things that were agreed in previous rounds. So last year you would have reviewed those ones from that starts 330 down to 447, and they were agreed as part of the existing capital programme. So it's just the red ones are the new proposals on the table. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that.
Thank you. So it was just really because the Civic Centre works, you said, was previously agreed, but obviously it is a big figure that's sitting on the proposed budget. So 2023, do we think that's the 31.9 million? Do you think that's we're at the point to spend that in 2023, 24? Because obviously with COVID, I would imagine these schemes have all been pushed. Also with the interest rates that we were talking about earlier, is there any impact on these big schemes that wouldn't have been known, you know, at different times? So.
Yes, I mean, these are, I mean, on all of them, but particularly on the Civic Centre, we will know there's been a lot, as you would imagine, as is sort of referenced in your question, a lot of reviewing the previously set budgets to make sure they are still adequate, fit for purpose, in the light of what we know about sort of building cost inflation, etc. So this is the kind of latest assessment of what we think we will need. We are close to a point of, you know, going for planning permission and then going out to sort of contract, and that will give us the absolute certainty, and we won't have the absolute certainty on the costs until we have, you know, got somebody under contract to do the works. But there has been a lot of work to refine and assess and make sure these estimates are as robust as they possibly can be in the light of what we know about how building cost inflation, etc., is running.
Okay, I'll ask a similar question while I'm waiting for others to wave their hands at me around Bruce Castle then, because that's the second. That one also, the total at the end of 19.4 million. Again, it says the funding is to match fund external funding should there be any. So is this something that's actually going to be happening? Or is this something that is only predicated on if you get match funding?
Yeah, so this is the match funding for the Levelling Up Fund bid that we put in. for sort of significant refurbishment works to Bruce Castle. So we've got the so that that is predicated on a successful bid. We're hoping to hear the results of that bid by the end of this month, but it has, as members will be aware, slipped considerably. So that we're waiting to hear. I did notice it said that it was subject to match funding, eternal funding, in the in the papers, and if only that were true, that we had eternal funding for Bruce Castle. But we're waiting to hear from the Levelling Up Fund bid as to whether that bid's been successful. And so the release of these funds from us would be dependent on that funding being successful.
Councillor White.
Thank you. I've got a general question. When we're talking about the borrowing on these capital bids, obviously, if it's got an H there, then it has to be paid back from the revenue budget. If it's got an S there, then presumably it's generating in one way or another an income. But what my question is, I'm sure we've been told this before, but I'll ask the question again. For each, let's say, for each £100,000 of borrowing, how much does that require to be paid back per year at the way the interest rates are as they are now? And also, and I think I'm not sure that I've had a clear understanding of this before, over what period of time, or does that depend on the individual projects and the type of borrowing that takes place?
I'll take that one quickly. So it is a bit of a moving feast, as you sort of alluded to at the moment, with interest rates inching up. So our sort of current working assumption is for every million, I haven't gone down to 100,000, but for every million borrowing, there's roughly a 61,000 revenue impact. I think I said right at the beginning that between when we wrote the December report and up to the point that we published the February report, we are revisiting those initial calculations. So we are going through that to try and make the budget so as realistic as we can and reflect. We have to reflect those increased interest costs. In terms of your other point about over what period, it depends on the type of asset. So if it's something like an IT system, they tend to be the borrowing is over a shorter period, maybe 5 years. If we're talking about something like a building, it's over a much longer period, sort of 35 to 50 years. So it varies depending on what kind of asset.
Can I just come back on that then? Those then specifically on those projects that are the two largest ones, they're both self-funding. So if you're saying at the moment 61k for every million, I guess then 50 million for the civic centre, and it's self-funding, that project is going to generate a 3 million per annum income. So I'm interested in knowing how that project is going to generate such a large income, and the same for the Bruce Castle project.
So it's not necessarily about income, it's all often about a reduced cost. So the civic centre one is more in the latter category. So we're the proposal is that we'd obviously move out of existing accommodation into something which was much more fit for purpose, I suppose, much more efficient, and there will be sales associated with that. And I think there was a lot of detail in the reports that have gone to Cabinet. There's been a number of reports on the civic centre development which provide all the detail. I can send you the links to those again, if you'd like that. In terms of the match funding, in terms of the Bruce Castle, Jess, I don't have the detail of that. I can go and find out about that one, unless Jess or Flo know the match funding side.
Thanks, and just finally, if that's okay. So, I mean, I think you did say this quite clearly, but just to be absolutely clear, you're saying on the civic centre, the whole cost is being um, um, financed by a reduction in expenditure. It's not that there's going to be any actual income generation there, but you know, we're not going to be hosting a supermarket or something like that on the civic centre site.
Not that I'm aware of. I've not been really close to that, but I've not seen or read anything about that. I think going back to Jess's point though, that we're these figures that we're looking at, these large figures, were when the original reports were written and agreed by Cabinet to actually proceed. They're sort of an envelope, and we won't actually press the button until we've been out to market tested that. And if the contractors come back with figures that are much higher than we're looking at, we will obviously have to revisit that. We can't just proceed if the scheme is significantly different and more costly than originally envisaged.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions on any of the other old bids that are before us that were previously agreed? Otherwise, I'm going to make a recommendation that I think particularly around the Civic Centre Works and Bruce Castle, it'd be really helpful if we get a little bit more detail back for the next meeting. I think just really for our own clarification around, I know you said we've got links to the Cabinet report, but if there's just a quick sort of summation, I think it's really that £1 million with a 61k revenue impact. I think for me, understanding how that works with the self-funding or is it self-funding or self-financing? Self-financing, sorry, how that works, because I've understood the question, your answer to Matt, to Councillor White, but I've also understood the revenue impact bit, and I'm just not quite sure how those two marry. You know, if civic centre works because we're selling off other property and we're reducing maintenance cost. How does that, is that like half of the bit and then the other half is still an impact on the revenue budget? I'm not sure. Could you? That would be really helpful for my brain at this time of night to try and work that out. Okay, so that's the recommendation from the panel, from the committee, is just really to get some more clarity on the Civic and the Bruce Castle. I think those are the two largest. Anything else that any other members want to raise at this point? No. Okay. No, you're fine. Okay. Yvonne, just checking with you. Anything that you wanted to raise? Just sorry, Yvonne, just checking that I've made sure you haven't got your hand up, that you're
just no, I would like to see Bruce Castle refurbished because my great grandfather was a scholar there.
okay.
So I'd
well, there
like
we
to
are.
see
A bit of local colour for the last bit of interest there on that last part of the agenda. Okay, so with that, I think we can close this part of the meeting, which is the budget meeting. I'll hand back to the chair, Councillor Bevan. So, sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, so sorry, I thought I had. Sorry, so this is closing down. So all officers that are on the meeting for this part, please feel free to leave and head off. But thank you so much. And we've made our recommendations. And
Thanks, councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good evening.
So item 10 now is the work programme, recommendations 2 to 2.3 on page 137. Any observations, comments, etc.?
Just bring it.
Yeah, so just for the panel tonight, the Children and Young People's Scrutiny panel has submitted its terms of reference or scoping document for the review on physical activity and sport for children and young people. That's on page 157 of the agenda pack. So that's just for the panel to note and approve.
Recommendations agreed? Approved. So the next item is item work programme.
Sorry, there's just one or two more.
I was going to say, sorry, Dominic, do you want to come back?
Yeah, so it was just on the work programme for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So we're looking at page 143 and 144 of the agenda pack. So we've got our budget meeting next week. So we're working on a table of all the recommendations from the 4 panels and from the meeting this evening. Obviously, the agenda pack for next week's meeting has already gone out, but the table that we're producing is going to include tonight's recommendations. So that'll be coming out to you tomorrow by email. So please look out for that, 'cause that'll be a key document that we'll be using next week. And then finally, there's on our March meeting, we've got the complaints annual report and the pilot building safety case and cabinet member questions with Councillor Jogi. But of course, we've got to reschedule the Councillor Davies cabinet member questions. So I just wondered if the committee had a view on how that should be done.
I think we were going to do Julie Davies at the same time as Councillor Jones.
On 30th of March. And then finally, there's the Violence Against Women and Girls review. So we had our first session in early December. There was a second session that was going to be looking at schools-based engagement in late November. Unfortunately, that was postponed. The officers couldn't get the right officers to be there on that day. We've rescheduled this one. I sent some possible dates around to everybody just before Christmas. We are proposing that session is rescheduled for the 2nd of February. I'll send all the details around by email after this, but that will have Wilma, Marissa and Chantal Fatania, who are the 2 that were part of the first meeting. Then also Sophie Hawthorne is a Healthy Schools lead, and also a couple of representatives from Solace Women's Aid, who are an organisation that were discussed during the first session. So that's there. We've also got a couple of other sessions scheduled in late January. Again, I'll send the details through, but we're looking at having a range of different community organisations to speak to us. There's a list that we've put together based on the suggestions that the panel has produced, and yeah, I'll circulate this after the meeting.